Dr. Nandipha Magudumana is also back in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court this morning as bail proceedings continue. Just yesterday, Magudumana told the court her boyfriend, convicted rapist and murderer Thabo Bester, had coerced her into fleeing the country. Unlike previous appearances, though, she was rather tearful and seemed surprised at the evidence that was read by the state. The state is opposing bail, saying Magudumana will attempt to evade justice. Our senior reporter, Silindile Masikane, once again joining me from the court in anticipation to what's expected this morning. Understandably, 11 a.m. that's when court proceedings will begin. But Slee, a very good morning to you once again. I mean, whether or not Magudumana will receive bail, it seems to be what we anticipate to find out from the courts. But the state quite, committed in presenting that she might be a flight risk. She has every reason to evade justice. And according to your analyst previously that you've spoken to, it seems she has a track record that proved that she could perhaps fly and leave the country.
Certainly so, and that's what we saw the state presenting in its affidavit from the investigating officer, who went into a lot of detail in telling the court exactly what kind of evidence they have against Magudumana. I think trying to establish the relationship, of course, between her and Bester, that it dates back to around 2006, and that she has on a number of occasions put it down on paper to authorities, even to the courts, labeling Bester as her customary husband. But what we saw in terms of her application for bail in her affidavit is that she claims she's a victim, that she was helpless and defenseless when she was found in Tanzania, saying that she left the country not of her free will, and that she was threatened by Bester, and that she had no idea that he was in possession of her passport. But to unpack what we can expect on day 2 of these legal proceedings, I am joined by legal expert Mr. Mpumelelo Zikalala. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Let's just start with what we saw transpiring on day 1 of the bail application. Do you think Magudumana presented exceptional circumstances to be released?
Good morning to you and also to your viewers. I think the presentation that she has made through her affidavit is enough for me. If I was the presiding officer, I would grant her bail. Remember that you are dealing with a Schedule 5 offense, so there are no exceptional circumstances which are required. You just need to show that it is in the interest of justice that you are so released. 4 elements that you have to look at. Is the public safety a question? Are you going to evade trial? Are you going to interfere with witnesses or trial and conceal evidence that has not been collected as yet? Or is your release on bail going to undermine the functioning of justice? If all those questions have not been answered in their set, then bail certainly is going to be provided. Now, we must think of it in this particular manner. It does not mean that if there's a likelihood or there are no preventive measures, it should not be granted bail. So, as a way of you evading trial, a condition could be imposed that you need to report at your nearest police station on a daily basis, a weekly basis, or even on a fortnight basis, provide all your traveling documents, and make sure that you do not leave the jurisdiction of that particular court without informing the investigating officer who has been assigned to your case. So we have to look at it in the sense of saying the court will have to play a balancing role of saying, I want to protect your rights to innocence, and yet I want to make sure that the functioning of justice happens in a proper manner. I can't pay your time back if at the end of the day you are found to be not guilty. So what I can do is find the middle ground and provide you some sort of reprieve. You continue with your life while this matter is proceeding, because it's not going to finish anytime soon.
Let's talk then talk a bit more about the state and the extent it went to present the evidence it has against Magudumana. Does this play any part in this application, or are we seeing the state really just showing their hand a little bit too soon?
I think the state is showing their hand a little bit too soon. They're delving into the merits of the matter. Now, the merits, yes, they may be important at this stage, but they're not that important. There's a trial judge or the trial court which is going to look into that. There's evidence which is going to be led. I can still have an opportunity to dispute that evidence or provide whatever defense that they can produce at the end of the day. The manner in which you're supposed to analyze whether a person is supposed to be granted bail or not is prescribed by the Criminal Procedure Act under Section 60, and that is certainly what we can look at. Now, the type of relations that have been taken on, the manner in which this particular manner, sequence of events is alleged to have happened, has no bearing whatsoever or a significant bearing whatsoever in these bail applications which are being conducted or they are being conducted at this stage. So I did think the state was trying to say, well, we want to say we're not going to grant you bail that easily. Show us that you will be able to stick with the conditions that they are. If that's not the case, at least the court, in giving out their ruling when granting you bail, must be able to provide conditions which will be able to allay our fears in terms of you evading trial. So I think that's what the state was trying to do when it made all of those allegations.
Lastly, then, let's talk about her issue of where she would reside if she were to be granted bail. The state raising the issue that the supporting affidavit of a friend who happens to be a foreign national, that address is not one that has been, assigned to this particular friend for some time. They haven't been living there for long. Could this have an effect in terms of her possibility of being granted bail?
It would if that particular address has not been verified by the state. Now, what normally happens is that the defense provided a list of addresses to the investigating officer and say to them, this is where we are going to live. Go and verify. Go and ask them whether they know that I'm living there or my client is going to go and stay there. And if you put a positive response, that address is done and dusted, it's verified. Now, there's no condition that says it must be an address in which you've lived in for plus minus 5 years or even 10 years. There's no period of time which has been prescribed. All that which is required is it is an identifiable address, an address that can be located, that if I want to find out where someone is, that is where I'll be able to get them. Remember those preventative measures that we spoke about earlier. You can even say, as part of the conditions, go to a nearest police station and sign the justice proof that you are still within this particular jurisdiction. It does not mean that if there's an address that you've stayed there for less than 2 days, it is not an address which is not going to be accommodated by the court. I did think of it as the state maybe grasping at straws a bit back. Maybe it's one of those conditions in which the state is going to say, even if you do grant bail to this individual magistrate, just make sure that you're able to allay our fears. In terms of this particular address, you're not going to move without informing the investigating officer, but most importantly, just make sure that they're able to come and sign on a regular basis at the nearest police station, because we do not want them to evade trial.
Thank you so much for your time this morning. That is legal expert Mr. Mpumelelo Zigalala unpacking what we saw on day one and what, of course, we can expect today is closing arguments in this bail application and the possibility, of course, of a postponement for the judgment. But we are expecting to start with proceedings at 11 a.m.
So much sleep will be sure, of course, to be bright and early, 11 o'clock. That's when court proceedings at the Thabo Bester saga. This case out in the Bloemfontein Magistrates Court, this way Nandipha Magudumana expected to continue with her bail application.